for Ishiba, he has said in the Hudson Institute piece that Ukraine today is Asia tomorrow. So basically, he is reflecting Kishida's comments, which some people had doubted. He said, replacing Russia with China and Ukraine with Taiwan, it is essential to have an Asian version of NATO to deter China by its Western allies. What sort of reaction have this idea of an Asian NATO have from the US? The US and India have come out and said, absolutely not.
I believe Prime Minister Ishiba will have to compromise to security reality or reality of regional international politics sooner or later, and not to talk about Asian NATO again in the near future. The reason is actually very simple. The major problem to have an Asian NATO is Japan itself. Because of the Constitution, Article 9, Japan is not allowed to form this binding obligation kind of security treaty with other countries.
So does this mean that he wants to push for a change to Article 9?
Exactly. As we all know, constitutional amendment for Japan is almost like, it's more than difficult. If you read the Article 106, the proceeding of constitutional amendment is almost like a mission impossible.
Right.
You need more than 2/3 from the upper house and the Diet. It is not like presentation of 2/3. It's the overall, the total number of Diet members of 2/3. Yeah. And then after you have the absolute majority, you need to give it to referendum. And post-war Japan have never had even once referendum experience at all.
Right.
So even politicians, leaders like late Prime Minister Abe, that kind of political capacity, he could even, dare to push for the bill.
And it's interesting, Professor, because people are calling Ishiba anti-Abe. They're calling him a dove. And yes, what you're saying is he's actually seeking something much further than Abe did.
Exactly. And not only because of Japanese constitution. In order to form this, the purpose to form this Asian NATO is to prevent large-scale war. And as we all know, there are two hotspots in East Asia. One is at Korean Peninsula, the other is at Taiwan Strait. If you are not including, if you don't plan to include Taiwan into this multilateral security, collective security platform, that platform itself is nothing, meaningless. So unless Prime Minister Ishiba plans to have diplomatic recognition with Taiwan, otherwise this Asian NATO is meaningless. And then as for more equal stance for U.S.
Let's go into that a little bit later.
Please.
Let's go to the nuclear weapons that Mathieu mentioned. So, Mathieu, when you read the Hudson Institute piece, it's very clear that there's an argument that's being made there by Ishiba. So he is essentially arguing that there does need to be a complete change to the global system. And he, obviously, we just quoted Ukraine, but he also, as you mentioned, talked about Russia and North Korea's and also China's threat. These are nuclear powers and their strategic partnerships. So can you explain further the rationale and the reasoning behind taking what seems to be at first an incredibly drastic step of sharing US nuclear weapons in the region?
Well, to me, the key sentence, and it was actually repeated by Ishiba when he gave his policy speech to the Diet earlier in October, the failure of deterrence in Ukraine is apparently really the core element of his thinking regarding national security and defense issues in East Asia. The risk that nuclear weapons states use their nuclear weapons to facilitate a conventional war is something we've been discussing since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. This is something that is being discussed in the context of the Korean Peninsula, but also in the context of the Taiwan Strait. And I think that for a long time, the deterrence discussion related to East Asia has been focused very much on missile defense and also on anti-submarine warfare to, in fact, deny China and the DPRK the capacity to engage in such offensive behaviors. But more and more, given the change of posture of China in the nuclear domain and given the progress of North Korea in that area too, I think the thinking is evolving towards the importance of reaching deterrence through additional nuclear capacities and not only through defensive measures. So I think it connects very much to many discussions that are taking place in the US at the moment.
But what would be the US reaction to this suggestion?
Well, it's, as Professor Kuo said, I think there are a lot of constraints that Ishiba will be facing when he pushes this agenda. And already when you compare the policy speech he gave at the Diet to the article that was published by the Hudson Institute, this element has disappeared. My personal hunch is that he will work towards those objectives, but mentioning them less clearly should be what we should be expecting from him, I think, going forward.
Okay. Professor Kuo, let's turn now to the relationship between the US and Japan. As you mentioned, he wants to bring it onto a more equal footing, and he actually said that in the Hudson Institute, so he might revise that position now, he said it's my mission to raise the alliance between our two countries to the level of the US-UK alliance. What is it that's special about that alliance, and why does he want to emulate that?
Number one, of course, Prime Minister Ishiba is aiming to revise or renegotiate with the states on SOFA, the status of U.S. forces agreement. And that, again, it's more than difficult to do that because, again, it's a problem of Japan's self-imposed and self-constrained kind of measure from its Article 9 of Japanese Constitution. And there's no reason to believe, because it's been too many times. Previous prime ministers, even the Prime Minister Abe, also tried to negotiate so far with President Trump. And the reason why is almost like impossible because of renegotiation of SOFA. Basically, you are involving into American domestic politics. It requires the U.S. congressional approval to revise any single wording on that SOFA. So if you look at the current status of American politics, still very chaotic presidential election, that's not, you know.
So what's your personal view of him writing that article just before, you know, the election was called?
I think he's this year he's 67 years old and been pursuing prime ministership for more than 40 years. I think he has his own idea, his dreams, but when it comes to realize becoming real, the Prime Minister of Japan, he has to face a lot of reality and pressures. And again, this is just an idea to make U.S.-Japan alliance more equal ground. But the step one to renegotiate SOFA is almost like mission impossible at current American politics situation. And as Mathieu mentioned, even this nuclear share idea, you know, President Yoon of South Korea got turned down by President Biden last year when he visited D.C. last May.
He was saying he wanted his own nuclear weapons, though, wasn't it?
No, the Korean thinking is to either to develop their own nuclear weapon or to have nuclear weapon sharing with the U.S. And the situation of Prime Minister Ishiba, I think a lot of people is not clear about that. His position is in between. February 27th of 2022, 3 days after the outbreak of Ukrainian war, there was their Prime Minister Abe on television emphasizing the reason for Ukrainian war, because Ukraine abandoned nuclear weapon. So Japan should seriously consider to talk about nuclear weapon sharing with the US. So a couple of days later, March 1st, Prime Minister Kishida formally denied the possibility for Japan to have any nuclear weapon sharing with the States. So Prime Minister Ishiba standing is in between. He want to talk about nuclear decision and operation negotiation with the United States, but not nuclear weapon.
Okay, so Mathieu, do you think that Ishiba can still be the dove whilst advocating for these measures, because he is pushing for deterrence, which will enable peace?
Yeah, I think that deterrence is really at the very core of his thinking, and it's going to be a priority of his prime ministership. I think he's been called a dove because of positions he took in the past regarding diplomacy with China, and I think he will try and find a balance between being very firm and robust on deterrence efforts and national defense spending, but that on the other hand he's been quoted many times as saying that communication channels are extremely important with the Chinese side, and that the China-Japan relationship should not be based only on the military balance.
So taking a leaf out of Biden's administration's book, which is there needs to be intense diplomacy as well.
Yes, I think it dovetails nicely with that kind of approach, but it doesn't mean that the military deterrence approach will be abandoned. I think it's going to be very central to his prime ministership. And the other thing is regarding the Yasukuni Shrine. I think sometimes the comments he made in the past have led him to be considered a dove, but we have to remember that the last time a prime minister of Japan went to the Yasukuni Shrine in exercise was in 2013.